I started focusing on triathlon, qualified for the Beijing Olympics last minute in 2008. The Beijing Olympics had a standout performance for me, and I was winning until the last, I think, 2 or 3 kilometers, and then completely capitulated and came 12th. Rather than thinking, oh no, 12th was terrible, I thought, wait a minute, I was the best in the world for 90% of that race. And so I went away from that thinking, I am actually really close. If I can just push on a bit more, I'll be there. You know, you don't just want to win on your day, your terms. You want to be the person that wins 9 out of 10 or 19 out of 20 races. And so I spent the next 3 years working out how on that day in London I was going to win 19 out of 20 times.
Fascinating.
Alistair, thank you so much for joining us today. It's so great to have you with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Today, I think I want to start in reverse because most recently we saw you just announce your retirement. How's it been for you since you've made that decision? And how hard, I guess, was it to come to that point?
Feels good. I've obviously known a sporting career comes to an end for sure. I've known that for a while, for a long while. You know, I've been kind of preparing in a way of finding other things to do, experiencing other things, playing at bits and pieces away from sport to keep myself interested and to give myself, to give me options of things to do post-retirement. And it's probably been over the process of the last couple of years. 2 years ago, I was probably thinking that's probably about the right time. And I just got more sure probably over a period of those couple of years. And in the last few months, I got more and more sure. Ultimately, it's just a very intrinsic kind of decision, isn't it? And it just felt like the right time.
So you actually, by the sounds of it, build up to a date. It wasn't this is now too much for me, I need to stop. It was something you were aware of.
Yeah, it was something that I was aware of. I wasn't 100% sure that it was definitely going to be on that date in November, even until a few days before. I'd probably sat at 99% for quite a while, and I actually did the last race of the season. That was a race in Dubai. It went well. I came third, and I was just like, yeah, it definitely feels like the right time, and I'm very happy with the career I've had, and I'm very happy to move on and excited by other things.
Do you think there's an element when you've achieved what you have, you always want to leave on your own terms? You never want to get to a stage where you're forced out and the decision is almost taken out of your hands?
There is definitely that, and that's kind of a common cliche in sport, isn't it? You don't get to choose your retirement day, or the vast majority of people don't, because injury or illness or something else happens. And I was very aware, being an older athlete who's had injuries, that if I carried on, for sure, some point in the next few years, I was probably going to get another big injury that required surgery, and then the decision would be more acute. So there was that, and leaving under my own terms was part of it for sure. And I guess that fed into the decision of it just feeling like the right time. I think on that physical health bit as well, I want to remain active. I mean, I am an athlete, but I'm just someone who loves being outside, being active, exploring, adventuring, challenging myself. And I've had a career of 18 years in professional sport. Along the time, there's a load of other things that I've wanted to have a go at, but not been able to, because I've been focusing on the next race, and that's been part of my career. And I wanted to have the chance of doing those. And before you ask, one of those isn't high rocks, actually. It's other ultra running, long distance bike races, all that kind of thing.
Have you ever thought of doing a Bear Grylls meets sport? What I mean by that is it'd be great to shove you on an island respectfully with a cam on your head and see you doing really adventurous sporting endurance activities and kind of survival / sports together.
Yeah, definitely. Those events exist actually in different guises. You can do multi-day adventure races that you do in teams where you cross vast swathes of countries by cycling, running, kayaking, swimming, everything. Or endurance. The world of bike packing has just kicked off, and these guys are crazy. There's a big one in the UK, I think, called the British Divide, where you basically do Land's End to John O'Groats unsupported on your own over the period of weeks, and it's first man to get to the other end wins, and you've got to self-support yourself. Probably the biggest ultra running race in the UK. The Spine is happening at the moment, considering it's winter, and they're running the Pennine Way that I think is 250 miles. Again, it's unsupported. You only stop on your own time to sleep, so it's first man from the start to the finish wins. that world of ultra sport has exploded in the last few years. It's quite amazing.
I guess, did the fact that you've got things outside of what you would have called your traditional competition, did that make a decision like a transition phase easier for you? You've done business work outside of tri when you've been competing. You've also moved into things like Ironman, you've done these endurance races. So would it be fair to say it wasn't completely stripping everything out for you?
Yeah, I think that's really important. As an athlete, you don't want your entire kind of self-worth to be tied just towards your sport. So I think while you're competing, it's really important to have other stuff going on just to take you outside of that. That doesn't mean to say that you aren't ridiculously focused when you have to be. You have to be focused at the right times and throw everything you've got, every nerve and sinew into your sport for sure. But I think having that context is important. And also, I always had a pathological fear of retiring from sport and having nothing to do.
Is that difficult though? Because you have these small windows of opportunity when respectfully you have to capitalize on your success and your fame to make big bucks. Because respectfully, otherwise it's not football. You're not getting paid $5 million a year. And so when you win gold, fuck it. I'm going to take the Weetabix advert. I'm going to take Evian. I'm going to be on British Airways. But you also need to stay focused. But you have to make money.
Yeah, there is. You have to make hay when the sun shines, and triathlon is definitely a niche sport, and the big attention comes around once every 4 years around the Olympic Games. So I always had a time programmed in kind of post that where I knew I was going to be busy and not training like I wanted to, and then refocus on the training after that.
Can we go to the economics of like triathlon? When you start out in triathlon, how much are you paid and who pays you?
Your revenue streams as a professional athlete, there's a few of them. There's national lottery funding if you're in the Olympic side of the sport. There is commercial sponsors. There is prize money and appearance fees. Okay. And I think that's basically it. Very quickly, if you're national lottery funding and you're successful, you get capped out of that because it's government funding. And if you're earning from other places, you don't get that anymore. So commercial sponsors can be...
What time do you cap out? So what amount do you cap out of that? Like?
I think it's about £50,000.
50K.
Yeah. Okay. And then out of commercial sponsors, they can be endemic sponsors. So that in triathlon, you're quite lucky because you can be sponsored by lots of businesses. If you're a runner, you can be sponsored by a pair of running shoes. I'm being a bit facetious, but triathlon, there's, bikes, wetsuits, nutrition, helmets, eyewear. And then in my example, triathlon is a niche sport, and to have a big corporate sponsor was kind of unheard of. And in the lead up to London, Johnny and me got a sponsorship agreement with BT, which was just completely different kind of scale for us as triathletes, and very exciting at the time. But when you start, you've got no idea effectively where that income is coming from. The national lottery, I guess, gives you the bridge sometimes to get there.
What do BT want from you when they have that conversation?
All sponsorship, without getting too technical, all sponsorship deals are normally split between a cost for them to use your image and a certain amount of time. So they might say, we want to use your image in XYZ. That could be on posters or on the phone book, as it was for BT, or in adverts, many other things. Also, the use of their logo on your kit comes, I guess, with a cost. And then then we want 5 days or 10 days of your time to do XYZ over the year.
How much does that cost then?
Well, I don't know now, but it's in most Olympic sports. I think, people are in the tens of thousands of pounds. If a very good sponsorship deals might make it into six figures, but I don't think there's that many, big six-figure contracts in Olympic sport, I wouldn't have thought.
It depends on cycles, right?
It depends on cycles, depends on the kind of time, yeah.
That's not as much as I thought for a big corporate sponsor. I mean, I'm like, okay, so for the non-corporate sponsors, we're a goggle company or we're a cap company or a glasses company. What does that look like?
Yeah, well, from a business point of view, if you think about the value these sponsors can derive from you wearing the goggles, it's relatively small because tiny logos, where's the value from that? So yeah, I doubt many people, apart from in swimming, if you're sponsored by Speedo, you're wearing Speedo trunks and goggles. I think there's probably big value in that if you're one of the top 10 kind of known swimmers in the world, but most people it'll be a few £1,000s, I would have thought, and plenty of free kit.
Sod it, I'd have BT tattooed on my arm for like 500k. These prices, like, I need the.
But you're a mercenary.
I need the real estate to market. Like, what?
Well, triathlon's quite good for that because you have a kit, and so you have plenty of logo space on your kit. And as you do long distance, the T100 and Ironman, there's a lot more logo space. But if you're athletics, swimming, to use those as examples, I mean, there isn't much real estate to put anything on, is it?
Get in the pool, you're buggered, aren't you? Yeah, it really sucks, doesn't it? Okay, so we've got that for sponsors. Sorry.
No, go for it if you want to keep going.
What was the other one? It was
prize money.
Prize money.
Yep. And appearance fees.
And so prize money is for like non-Commonwealth Games, non-Olympics.
Yeah.
It's everything else?
Everything else. A range of small.
So when you run in
races.
Dubai, when you do triathlon in Dubai, is that for prize money?
Yeah, pretty much all the races in professional triathlon, everything prize money to some extent. I mean, at the bottom end, it could be a few $1,000s. At the top end, it's a few $100,000, but they're all.
Oh wow!
all
so you win a few $100,000 if you're number one.
Yeah, you can do for the biggest races of the year.
Didn't you just kind of win everything? I kind of always remember you just winning.
Well, yeah, at one point in the Olympic world, I was winning all the races and the series, and so there's prize money for each individual race, and then prize money for being the world champion overall. And in triathlon's actually in quite a good place at the moment professionally, because there's quite a number of series. There's the World Triathlon Series, which is the Olympic distance. There's Super Tri, which is short distance. There's PTO, which is middle distance, and Ironman, which is long distance. And so they're all kind of independent series playing prize money per race and an overall series pot.
What was the most you ever won for winning a race?
I don't know for one race, but this overall series, when I was winning them, was maybe $150,000 or something in that kind of range, I think.
So this is all amazing, right? And possible when you're at the top. But you gave up a medicine degree at Cambridge, right, to really properly pursue your triathlon dream. At the time, you didn't know you were going to do this. So should we say, hit the heights that you did. So how was that, making that decision? Because that is a massive risk for your long-term future.
Yeah, that was obviously an enormous risk and a very difficult decision. And ultimately, you're not really thinking of the economics of it. I just about knew that that being a professional triathlete, and by that I mean kind of getting by, was possible. I didn't know that. I had no idea that. Of course, I never even dreamed actually. I'd won the Olympics twice. Never mind thinking about the economics of it. So it was a complete passion decision. I mean, I must admit at the time it was a short-term decision. I was going to go and do sport for a bit, try to go to the Olympics in Beijing and then London possibly, and then probably go back to studying.
Did you how was that chat with your family, saying I'm leaving my degree?
Yeah, it was difficult, but they were amazingly supportive. My mum and dad are both doctors, and so kind of very academic and pushed me to do well academically through school. But ultimately, my dad just said, "You've got to follow your dreams and kind of pursue your passions." And growing up, one of the things we all definitely had drilled into us was, it doesn't really matter what you do it as well as you possibly can. So I think they were very confident that it was, I was going to do it to the best of my ability.
Did you recognize from an early age then, when you were getting out, that you were really good at this, that you could make it right at the top?
No, through my teenage years, I wasn't actually that good, wasn't the best. And so, to put it in perspective, as a junior, I think as a 17-year-old, I was about 50th in the World Junior Champs. And then as an 18-year-old, I then won it. And that happened a few weeks before I was going to university. So all of a sudden, it kind of all came to a head really quickly.
And if you are should we say, middling triathlete then, is this a viable career? Is this something that you can? This was going to
be my question, which is like when we broke down those revenue streams, respectfully, I'm in pain. Like, I'm pained. You're the best in the world. You're the most famous triathlete. Like, you're gonna ever, pretty much. Yeah. It's quite a good statement.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm staying quiet at Alistair as if he's going to say,
And like, these numbers are not crazy numbers. We've got 50, maybe 200, and maybe another 300 to 500 in prize money for the most famous ever. Ronaldo gets that for posting a swimming trunks picture on Instagram.
Yeah, it's different world. But
my point is, is it a viable career for the majority of triathletes?
Well, it depends what you mean by the majority. I estimate there is, at any one time, there's probably, 40 men and 40 women maximum who are making a good living, a kind of good to standard.
Over 100K. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe less, making a living in the world out of triathlon. It's a very much an estimate, and how many of those are also helped by public money as well, probably quite a lot of them. So yeah, it's definitely not a high earning sport.
Can I be blunt? Is that because there hasn't been a good marketer in that rank? And what I mean by that is, like, no one actually is a showboater in triathlon. No one is a Nick Kyrgios or a Cristiano Ronaldo even. But, like, I think triathletes could make a ton by doing what I eat in a day, how I train, be super open in terms of documenting their regimens. And that opens up bring personality to triathlon.
Yeah, I think social media has given people the opportunity to do that, hasn't it? And that kind of wasn't there for most of my career. I mean, Instagram was kind of only a bit more recent, makes me feel very old. But that opportunity kind of has come, I think, in the last decade, and athletes are trying to do it. I don't think anyone has really broken out and done it to the kind of extent that you're talking about yet, but it probably will happen at some point. You're right.
I wouldn't single it out to triathlon. You look at, if you look at athletics broadly, you look at an Olympic Games and you look at these incredible sports, they're everyone's favourite sport for 2 weeks of every 4 years.
Yeah, well, give me an example from another non-mainstream sport of someone who has successfully broken out. I was trying to think of it.
I mean, you're saying Bolt for his personality. I know there's obviously excellence in sport, but his personality of showboating, of the...
Yeah, but he's absolutely stand out in his sport. Mo a bit with that.
He's been pretty good in branding himself.
Yeah.
So when you're earning these different revenue streams and growing the career, are you thinking about a life post triathlon and financial security post that? How do you think about that mindset when you're in the weeds of triathlon, but also, shit, this is going to end?
Yeah, I kind of was, as the answer to that question. And two, that is the challenge of a sporting career, because you're never quite sure when it's going to end. So it's open-ended. I like to say I had a great manager. I'd still do have the same great manager. And he told me at the time when in the early days, you won a round of the World Series, it was $20,000. And I think he said to me something like, you're a young man, you can go and spend this on what you want. But if you invest it now, that could be a year you don't have to work when you retire. And that, for probably said lots of other things, but that really struck a chord with me. And so I was very keen on kind of spending and existing on what I needed at the time, which, to be fair, you don't need a lot of money as an athlete because you're super focused. You're not spending, you're not doing the kind of activities that spend money because you're at home on a night, getting an early night and trying to eat well and sleep well, and super dedicated to training. So I always saw it like that. Every one of those races I win $20,000, put that away. That's something that will mean I don't have to work for a year when I retire, potentially.
Do you think there's enough financial education for young athletes, young triathletes, but young athletes more broadly on, okay, I win the 20 grand. Now what?
I mean, what is enough, and who's got the jurisdiction and responsibility to give that education? Lots of bodies are trying quite hard. I do work with the IOC, the Olympic Commission, and there is loads of that kind of information available if people go and look for it. I think sporting clubs, organisations have all become much more attuned in the last decade or so about supporting athletes and helping them to start planning for their post-career transition and all those kind of things. So it's something that is constantly improving, and I think it's come a long way.
So what did you do when you weren't training and competing in that spare time to position yourself to be successful in these other areas?
Well, literally, when you're training hard for triathlon, you want to be sat at home with your feet up, pragmatically and kind of physically resting as much as you can. And it changed. When I was a young athlete in most of my 20s, I was super focused. I had the kind of attitude that I didn't want to have anything else, almost no other responsibility, so I could fully focus on training. As I got a bit older, I started realizing that I really needed other interests to keep my kind of mind busy outside of training and to give me a little bit of a identity, as well as knowing that the retirement day was looming on me at some part. So I kind of needed other focuses. So actually, one of the main things was I started angel investing in businesses. From quite early on, a few of my sponsors were kind of deals with little bits of equity here or there. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, and there's potential exits. And then I got as you guys know, you start seeing thousands of different investments. I joined some local angel networks to understand and learn a bit more about it, and understand what a effective deal from sponsorship or investment could look like, and started building up a little portfolio of investments. I guess alongside that, I started a few other businesses, like a management agency with my long-term manager, a small cycling clothing business with a really good friend of mine that's grown up over the last 5 or 6 years. So things to keep me interested, engaged, and learn on the job.
You did a finance degree as well, right?
Yeah, I studied alongside. I then went back and studied firstly sports science and physiology alongside my sport. My coach was really keen to always in education, which was really right, alongside sport. And then I studied a finance master's after that. So I kind of always had a basis and an enjoyment of the analytical side of it.
Why is it in UK sport we lose education, where in European athletes they do not, but still maintain the same level of performance and ability?
I don't know about that difference. Probably the thing that I know more about is the US system. I mean, the US system is incredible. And I think that's because college sport, so university sport, is so well done. So really, if you want to be the best athlete you can be, you don't think, I want to go and join this club or set up somewhere else. You think, which is the best college to go for my sport? And then part of being a NCAA athlete is you have to achieve certain academic levels. And so it goes side by side. It's a really incredible system. So you could have been an NFL player, which you could have gone into the draft directly and got paid a fortune, but until recently, you went to college and didn't get a penny. But now they've just changed the rules. It's called the NIL rules to allow you to get paid in college. And it's I think, probably going to completely change US sport.
Had you had a ton of money earlier in your career, as footballers do, as an Emma Raducanu did, would you have been able to keep the same level of discipline and consistency, do you think?
It's easy to say yes, of course, isn't it? Yeah. I'd never in it for the money. And for me, it's about sport and the enjoyment and being the best, performance-wise, the best possible I could be. And yeah, I think that is the truthful answer, but also, who knows?
So on that, let's go to, you have London 2012 looming. You competed in Beijing, right? You finished 12th. You then kind of build up to this home games. To literally paraphrase exactly what you've just said, what did you have to do to say, right, okay, now I've got to get to number one? What happened to make you the Olympic champion?
One of the things now, it's reflecting on a career in sport, whether that's for, a podcast or my own kind of interest or writing or whatever, is it's really easy to A, look at things with rose-tinted glasses, and B, reflect in segments and key moments. So, I'll give an answer now, which is based around kind of key moments, but in Triathlete, it's not. It's a progression that happens over a long period of time when things happen slowly and then kind of all at once. To paraphrase that famous quote. But yeah, I started focusing on triathlon, qualified for the Beijing Olympics last minute in 2008. The Beijing Olympics had a standout performance for me, and I was winning until the last, I think, 2 or 3 kilometers, and then completely capitulated and came 12th. But I came away from Beijing.
What happened?
Just, I think I overheated. I was competing kind of way above my ability, really, and I'd never expected to be in the position of leading, but I was, and then finished 12th, which was actually an amazing result at the time.
So you woke up the next day being happy about that?
Yeah, and in the weeks after that, I thought, rather than thinking, oh no, 12th was terrible, I thought, wait a minute, I was the best in the world for 90% of that race. I only need to find the last 10% and I'll be the best in the world. And so I went away from that thinking I am actually really close. If I can just push on a bit more, I'll be there. The next year in 2009, I got there, won all the races of the World Series that year, was world champion and the best athlete in the world. So at that point, I knew I had 3 years to the next Olympic Games, and I had to just, rather than go from being able to, my always looked at the kind of probabilities of it. And that's something probably I've taken into business a bit, that you don't just want to win on your day, your terms. You want to be the person that wins 9 out of 10 or 19 out of 20 races. And you want to be able to control and be the one in the driving seat. And so I spent the next 3 years working out how on that day in London, I was going to win 19 out of 20 times or 29 out of 30 times.
What small changes to your routine, to your training, to your diet made the biggest difference?
I looked at it as a constant form of innovation by iteration. So I never looked for big changes. I would look at my routine, and endurance sport is basically a load game. How much load can I get into my week and build that load up over 6 months to get the biggest possible adaptions?
So when you say load game and how much load you can get into your week, what does that actually mean? Distance?
Yeah, well, physiologists will debate this, but distance or time, amount of activity.
Okay.
People talk about it as distance or time or the amount of energy you've expended, or it doesn't really matter. But yeah, how much activity can I get in my week? And you split that up across different intensities, but yeah, how much can I pack in a week sustainably over a long period of time? Because that gives me the maximum total load. Your body adapts to that load and gets you fitter, faster, stronger.
When you actually were at that start line, were you calm and relaxed, or was there a pressure on you that you felt you'd never felt before? There
was a load of pressure. Triathlon's a small sport, and all of a sudden at the Olympics, there's interest in it. So it feels like there's a lot more pressure. There was a lot of internal pressure. I've at that point dedicated all those years of my life to that moment, but you've got to not dwell on those things in that moment. But for me, that's the essence of high performance sport. Can you dedicate those thousands of hours of training, hard work, sleep, recovery, and then stand on the start line knowing there's no reason, you're fully prepared, and there's no reason why you can't perform to the best of your ability.
And when you cross and you win, and it's a home games, so the attention around it just amplifies. Do you feel your life changed?
Yes and no. You cross the finish line and there's a million emotions. Obviously you're happy, but mostly flip and relief that you actually pulled it off, and loads of other things. You're then very busy, going to all kinds of media things, sponsorship things, parties. And yeah, it was something that
Do you feel like it? You've just done a pretty big epic race you've trained 4 years for. Oh, fuck, now you want me to go and speak to, a random sponsor? Or is it like you just embrace it because you have to milk it?
You embrace it. Like we talked about before, there's an element of making hay. And of course, you're kind of prepared for it. Although I never actually thought about what it'd be like to cross the line. All my kind of preparation and mental processes were getting to that finish line and never considering what it'd be like to cross the line in first place. That was just how I went about it. Because
I didn't think about that.
No, I didn't want to get distracted by what it'd be like, and that to take the focus away preparing for getting there.
Because I've always kind of trained myself on the power of positive visualization, and picturing yourself there actually increases the odds of it happening versus picturing yourself stumbling and it increases the odds of that happening. Do you not find the power of positive visualization helpful?
Yeah, definitely. But for me, it was about visualizing being in the last kilometre, beating my competitor in the last kilometre. And that meant, what do I need to be able to do that? What particular session is going to give me that edge? How do I practice that? How do I practice what that would feel like and what it would feel like to be able to speed up and win? I never got to the point where I'd visualize crossing the line.
How much of your ambition did you tie up in winning that race?
Oh, probably all of it for the years leading into it, yeah.
Quite often, we've spoken to a few sports people, men and women. It's a common thing they say when you actually achieve the thing that you've been chasing for so long, you get a short high, but then you have a real low because it immediately moves on to what's next.
Well, whether it's a low or whether it's just a kind of loss and an emptiness, maybe they're the same thing, but you've had a driving North Star goal for all of those years, right? You get up in the morning to go and train for this thing. And then the next morning after the race, you wake up and it's happened and that's gone. So there is an element of that. And to answer the question you asked earlier about did it change you? I mean, yeah, this crazy few weeks of being busy and doing things you'd never otherwise normally do, like media and all kinds of commitments. But then there was a time a couple of weeks afterwards where I was at home. I decided to go swimming training the next morning, found myself in the pool, found myself, racing up and down, and there's actually no reason to be there. And it's, I just very much realized it is just who I am. So there is a part of training, and this sounds super cliched, but the benefit, the kind of the joy, the satisfaction, all the positives you get from the achievement in itself are in no way make up for the sacrifice. They just don't. And so you have to enjoy that process.
What do you tell yourself when you wake up? Your knees are hurting, your shins are hurting, your legs are tired, it's cold outside, it's raining. What do you tell yourself?
If you've got to that point, you've already failed, because you might get yourself out of bed tomorrow and you might get yourself out of bed feeling like that the day after, but you're not going to do that for the next 300 days or 600 days. So I had a couple of strategies. One was to have a hard set routine. So the alarm went off and I didn't give myself the chance to think like that. I was getting up and going training. The other thing was remove all the barriers possible from going training. So that might be, get up, make sure all your kit is ready, simple things, kit's warm, dry, ready, your bike's going to work, whatever, the bike on the turbo trainer is ready to go, you're meeting someone. So all the potential barriers from going training or going to the gym are removed as much as possible. And then crucially, you always have slightly different motivations. You might get up because you want a cup of tea, and then you get in the car for another reason, and then you get to the training session and you walk into the gym or the pool or the running track because you want to interact and socially see your friends. And then a few minutes later, you are running around or swimming up and down as hard as you can, racing the person next to you, and you're doing that because it's competition and you're motivated by competition. So you've drawn on 10 different forms of motivation potentially in that 40 minutes to get yourself from bed to doing something really hard.
Which was your least favorite?
Swimming.
Why?
No theatre.
Yeah, inside, monotonous. There's no adventure or exploration there. I found that the hardest. Whereas I think a lot of what motivated me was being outside, exploring the natural environment. And obviously you get those in the other sports.
Harry has the pleasure of this every day, obviously, but how much did competing and working with, I guess, your brother shape your career?
A massive amount. Yeah, loads. We got on most of the time. Most of the time, I think, as all brothers know, but you also really know how to wind each other up when you need to. I think the pragmatism was that we were each other's best training partner. So
Did you make
both...
each other better?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So we knew that there wasn't anyone else better to train with than each other, as well as the relationship. From a young age, we were traveling and racing around the world. To do that with your brother, someone you know and trust, I think is important as well. And yeah, of course, we competed a lot, but we worked out quite early on, I think, that we absolutely competing with each other at the hard sessions at the right time was a massive positive. But we couldn't compete with each other. When you're doing 20 sessions a week, 35 plus hours of training, you can't compete across all of those. You just got to compete on the key ones.
And when it came to competition, how interactive were you with each other?
In racing itself, we're quite interactive. We knew that we could kind of help each other for most of the race, maybe through the swim, through the bike, and then running it was kind of every man for himself.
What have you got?
Is it helpful to hate your opponent?
No, I don't think you need to hate your opponent. I think one of the things with sport quite often is these, like, the juxtaposition of what you need to do and the thought process you need to have in the moment compared to what you can be the rest of the time. So yeah, for sure, at times you have to be the most selfish, person ever, but that doesn't mean you need to be that the rest of the time, or focused or resilient. And yeah, some people derive competition and motivation from that animosity towards other people. I think I only need it in the moment.
Yeah, but then I have to ask, because you've just said, you've got to be selfish and you're in that moment. And then I'm sure you've been asked it loads. I'm sorry, they won't forgive me if I don't. You probably, have one of the most selfless moments in professional sport that anyone's ever seen. You won't say it, so someone else can for you. Where Johnny's winning and you come around a corner and he's pretty much collapsing. Right, and you pick him up and you make sure he gets over the line, then you push him over the line ahead of you. Was that instinct?
The truth is, I don't know. I was at the end of a long, hard race. I had probably less than a second from between seeing him, making the decision and picking him up. So there's not a lot of conscious processing there. I think the truth is that I just grabbed him because in that moment I thought I could see he's wrong with him. What's wrong with him? I need to get him to the finish line and medical attention as quick as possible. Let's go. In the next couple of minutes, I realised the finish line's further away than I thought. B, that if I could keep going fast, we might not get caught by the people behind, so we can still get on the podium. And C, that Johnny was trying to win the overall world title, which means he needed a good result in that race. So if I could get him across the finish line before me, he was still in with a shot of it. And yeah, that was it. It was crazy. The response to that is still definitely the thing I get asked about most.
You just don't see that in competitive sport, really. And so when it does happen, it's always going to get people, and people love seeing. They love selfless acts, right?
I'd pick you up.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't. I was literally.
I would be straight past. Selfie, eh?
Shoving him in.
Mum, he's fine.
Yeah. Get up.
In terms of different Olympic medals, in Singapore, how much do you win for a gold?
Yeah, so different countries, different countries have different ways of paying for medals. I think Singapore is the one. I might be wrong, or it's Hong Kong that pays $1 million.
Yeah,
but
how much does the UK pay?
Nothing.
Is that right?
Well, I don't know the rights and wrongs of it, and different countries do different things. You hear countries of giving athletes, if you win, I think pensions for life or various other things like free hotel stays for life and all kinds of things. I think in St. Lucia, she won the 100 meter, I can't remember her name. They gave her like a plot of land and maybe a pension, and so it's different everywhere.
What do you think is the right thing if you were to construct it for the UK?
Yeah, I think there probably needs to be. I would. You're really challenging my kind of free market libertarian kind of stance on life. Yeah, I think it's probably giving someone some amount of cash to do what they want to do with it. Yeah, I think in the UK, our public money goes into supporting athletes before the case, right? So, with the lottery funding, it's to pay for coaching, support, facilities, medical support, all those things. And that's probably where the funding is, whereas other countries do a bit more the other way around.
Do you feel lottery funding is adequate?
Yeah, I don't know about other sports. I think in triathlon it is very adequate.
Do you think World Athletics now doing what they did in the summer and paying athletes for winning medals, do you think that starts to move the needle on this discussion?
This is a massive topic in sports, politics and administration because it really goes to the core of what the various stakeholders, without getting boring about it, are supposed to be doing. In the Olympic movement, there are stakeholders that are Olympic committees, so Team GB, whatever the Singapore Olympic Committee is, and it's been traditionally seen that it could be their role to commercially reward athletes for success. It hasn't been traditionally seen that that's the job of the international sport federations, whether that's athletics, gymnastics, triathlon, swimming, whatever it might be. We're in a world of evolving sport, and part of this conversation, we've been talking about the commercialization of sport, so things will continue to evolve. I'm very interested to see where we end up on that front.
The reality is you want to attract people to compete. And look, I fully appreciate winning an Olympic medal is not about money, but it does feed into the viability of it as a career and being able to look at it and say, do you know what, if I do hit these pinnacles, I'm going to get some form of validation and recognition to allow me to do that from a business perspective, as well as obviously from the incredible life it gives you around. But I just feel that, when you're looking at this now, it's 50,000, I think, and then was it 25,000 and then 10,000 or something for a bronze. As you said, it's still probably on the national governing bodies to be able to do that, to give them the opportunities. Yeah,
and different countries. So I think the US have been paying athletes for a long time, I think, and it's never been done. So that's a National Olympic Committee. It's never been done by international federations until athletics have done, is my understanding. In the sphere of Olympic sports, people, I'm not arguing against it. People would say it's the international sport federation's job to almost, what's the right word, to redistribute the funding they get from the Olympic movement and commercial partners because their job is all about the sports development piece. They're trying to build the bottom of the pyramid as much as you can to support those things all over the world to get as many people into athletics or triathlon as possible.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because you look at international sport in general, and generally they go, oh, well, football players playing for England don't get paid loads. Golf, there's always conversation around the Ryder Cup. The US Ryder Cup team went on a big crusade about not being paid. But in those sports, their primary commercial opportunity doesn't sit at the top end, that international game.
Olympics,
whether the Olympics is your pinnacle.
Yeah.
So it is different. It's very different for athletics compared to other sports.
Yeah, it is very different. That's very true. And you could make the argument that rather in investing cash in the base, which is very hard to do from a central position, motivating it from the top of the pyramid has a bigger effect on the base. Anyway, I don't know, but the world of commercializing sport, it's obviously moving fast. We were just talking before about the various kind of business opportunities in sport which are ever expanding at the moment, and I think the traditional sporting world is going to have to keep evolving around that.
Do you feel that the Olympics is moving with the times, or do you feel that it is becoming an outdated institution?
It's a really great kind of philosophical thing to think about, because for me, the Olympics has to evolve. Like many great old organizations, part of its value is in its traditions, right? It's an ancient Greek sporting movement. The modern Olympics was founded in the 19th century by a French aristocrat. There's some of those. Many of the sports have existed since then. It's about purity. It's about kind of amateurish competition. It's a very kind of simple, authentic, a lot of those real core values of Olympianism, as it's called, that I think are really important in the world. I mean, away from the sport, its value is that over 10,000 young people as athletes get together every 4 years. They live under the same roof, eat in the same place, from every country on the planet. Nothing else is doing that. And I think that is so important from a world political community point of view, that there is so much value in that. So there is traditions that there is important, but of course, to stay relevant, you have to adapt and you have to modernize. And that is a constant balance that the Olympic movement needs to keep getting right.
What would you do to adapt the Olympic Games to an ever-changing world?
Well, I think that in lots of ways they're doing a great job. So I spent loads of time in Paris in the Olympics watching the events, and so the newer sports that have come in that are so-called the urban sports, BMXing, 3-on-3 basketball, skateboarding,
breakdancing.
No, don't.
That's not one of them. Yeah. That's not one of them. So they're like modern sports, kind of.
It's got pulled, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
It was only on for one time. Yeah, I did go and watch that.
The BMX racing was amazing. The speed out the trap and
the racing. But so those sports, rather than are in traditional venues that cost a massive infrastructure projects, cost a fortune to build, quite often have to be out of the city. Those new sports were in temporary venues in Paris Centre. Kind of respectfully done around some of the landmarks, right in the city centre. And are attracting young audiences and competitors. So there is that innovation going on, and I think that's a really important part.
What sport that's not in the Olympics should be in the Olympics?
Well, I thought, so squash hasn't been in, is going in for the first time in LA. I think that's really cool. I think squash ticks a lot of those boxes, and I love the idea that you can put in a temporary venue in the city's existing landmarks, in an amazing hall or a train station or something.
Well, that's also really important, isn't it? Because it's part of the financial issue that a lot of host cities face now, where there's becoming a narrative where we're hearing cities don't want to compete because the cost of putting on a games is so high. So what Paris did amazingly was they just used their infrastructure to create these incredible venues. Yeah,
part of the kind of Olympic movement going forward, their new agenda is the sustainability piece, and the sustainability piece is how do we attract the biggest number of potential host cities, and that is of course not building new venues, not having to spend massive money on infrastructure. You were or are on the Athletes Commission. Is that still or still on for another few years? Yeah. What do you do on that? What's the responsibility? The Athletes Commission represent the athletes of the Olympic movement as a stakeholder to the wider Olympic Committee. And the kind of things you will
have to discuss, oversee, or
I guess to some extent the kind of things we've been discussing, wider points about the Olympic movement, as well as a lot of it is around the other way. What does the Olympic movement offer athletes? So that could be resources around career advice or health or commercial opportunities with Olympic top partners and all that kind of thing.
What sport is in the Olympics that you think shouldn't be?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Well, breakdancing is out now. That's an easy answer.
Really?
Yeah. So I tell you why. Not just to hate on that sport. I went to watch it, and I know enough about sport, but even if you don't know, you can normally go and watch most sports, and within 10 minutes you've got a pretty good steer on what the rules is and what's good and what's not. We become an armchair fan very fast. I watched breakdancing, and you just had no idea. You'd think. So one guy there was doing loads of backflips and tricks. I know there's a lot of people that are going to think I'm very ignorant here, and that looked incredible. And the other guy just span round a little bit, and the other guy would win. And you'd just be like, I've got no, it was just impossible to understand. So on that reason alone,
it was
the lack of my understanding, as ignorant as that sounds.
It was really out there. Did you like it?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. No, you didn't.
Did you see the memes that came from her? Reagan?
Yeah. Well, she broke out, didn't she?
She broke the Olympics. Like that was like one of the defining moments.
She's now retired because of the...
Has she?
Yeah. She got so much hate off the back of it.
Oh no, I'm just adding to it. Sorry.
How do you feel about we mentioned earlier the different kind of the rise of paddle ownership in terms of paddle teams. We've obviously got many different like Gerard Piquet's doing Kings League. There's Baller League. There's how do you feel about the sport as an asset class and investing in it as an athlete?
So there's a couple of questions there, isn't there? I think sport as an asset class is really exciting on a load of fronts. Obviously, there is much more interest in health, fitness, well-being, and that's part of the paddle thing. There's a lot of interest in media and content rights, as you guys know, and sport being having value as a live entertainment piece. I think has got probably outsized value and continues to do so in the world of streamers, and a lot of it is driven by that for sure. And sport is a massive consumer category, not only in itself, but as we talked about earlier, being able to tie on other consumer brands around that, it gives people big opportunities. I've seen bigger interest in it in triathlon. A triathlon, the T100 World Series, is a privately, basically Silicon-backed venture capital private league, which is super exciting for triathlon, that external capital is coming into the sport in that way. To look at paddle for an example, I think it's great that it's providing opportunity for more people to get involved in sport. I mean, ultimately, when you look at it that way, my thesis that anything that removes barriers to help people be more active, it really fits the bill with that. I think that's fantastic. In triathlon, there probably always has to be an element of mass participation alongside professional racing as a key revenue stream, because so far the media content rights don't pay enough revenue to cover the cost of events. So you have to have mass participation as a different revenue channel.
I just think it'd be a fascinating drive to survive, especially with you and your brother, actually, to have done that. You can see like an epic cinematic kind of documentary, kind of taking you inside the lives of, I would kind of picture it as the competition between the two, and really kind of go inside those lives, the training, the preparation, the behind the scenes. It kind of feels like triathlon needs that moment. It's the other thing with triathlon, it's not a great short form event. What are you going to watch on TikTok? Sorry, what are you going to watch on TikTok?
Train.
Alistair on a bike. Be fascinating. But there's no cataclysmic moment of goal, try, conversion.
So it has to be everything around it.
Yeah,
it has to be what gets you there.
Yeah.
But then I guess it comes back to one of the first points you made, which is we have to be so focused and insular when it comes down to those moments that the last thing you want to be doing is thinking about the commercial viability and follower reach that you probably have.
Yeah, no, I think the big picture is people will watch any sport because it's live and it's engaging in some shape or form. I mean, Tour de France is the most successful kind of endurance property, say. I mean, I don't know, I love cycling, but 6 hours a day of cycling where basically nothing happens. I mean, other sports to an extent that happen over a long period of time. I know maybe not cricket for you, but cricket, darts, snooker, people watch, there is appetite obviously out there, the market to watch it. I think it becomes around telling the stories around the personalities and the people in a genuine way, because I think sometimes it's very easy to say we need to get attention in the wrong way and, you know, it not be genuine and authentic. And I think in the long run, that doesn't help either. So people feel engaged, supporting the fans. And that's what Drive to Survive's done. And it's been really successful in the sports that it's worked. I think there are other versions that for me haven't worked anywhere near as well as the F1 version. And I don't know why that is.
The tennis one didn't work at all.
Yeah. Have you watched the athletics one, Sprint?
No.
No. They did one?
Yeah.
On Netflix?
Well, there you go.
It's either BBC or Netflix, I'm not sure.
Not good?
I wasn't an enormous fan of it. Other people have. There is a cycling version of it as well. So it's actually quite, there's lots of sports doing it.
The problem is you need to have the main people participating. The problem with tennis was that they didn't, there was no Djokovic, Nadal, Federer. It was, it's hard. Nick Kyrgios was the first episode and that was good. But then it was, should we say, maybe top 20 players rather than top 5. Full Swing worked amazingly in golf because it was everyone. It was from McIlroy to Dustin Johnson to Koepka to, the biggest personalities. And therefore you're tuning in to see what that's like. And also, no one really wanted to sit down and watch the all or nothing of Man City where you're winning every week. It was
there needs to be jeopardy.
There has to be a bit of jeopardy. There has to be a bit of like variance. Will they succeed? As you said, will you black out on the final 300 meters? Hopefully you don't. But
which event, race, you name it, have you not done that you would most like to do and think would test you most?
Things test you in different ways. For me now, it's really most about adventure and pushing myself over a long period of time. So yeah, I'd love to do ultra running. Probably the biggest ones in the world. Single day one of that is UTMB, or multi-day is maybe Marathon des Sables. Maybe some ultra bike racing. There's kind of a load of different things I'm looking at doing. Things that I've wanted to do for a long time, really. More the adventure, endurance things.
Anything that's got ultra in it.
Anything
basically.
That's got ultra in it, yeah.
What about, looking at it, Harry touched on it there, would you invest in something and as an asset piece, get behind it to try and push it where you'd probably, value it as a competition, but also think, okay, I'm going to add some business now to this as well?
From a league triathlon point of view, I think if it was right, I think the sporting leagues are a great asset class. Obviously, there's team franchises as well, which like in paddle and many other sports are starting to appear. How big they remain to be seen. Not everything can be the NBA, can it? So yeah, I'm maybe not so sure on those. But yeah, it's an interesting time. It's a really good time to be in sports investment, I think.
I just think it's like everything is the attention economy. And so something will fall out of the attention budget of the consumer. And when you have that, it's like, I think it's probably traditional cinema for sure. Traditional cinema's already fallen out of the attention budget for the majority.
That's why they release straight onto Netflix.
It's why they release straight onto Netflix. It's why Barbie and Dune and, very, very few actually make it like big blockbusters. And otherwise they just skip it. And that's why I think Baller League or your Kings League or whatever that is replaces them. But I'm always thinking about like the attention budget and how it changes.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Very difficult.
And the transience of sports. Like, is paddle actually sustaining? Maybe. I don't know. Is pickleball? Maybe.
Yeah, they're probably not both of them though. I think that's and there is that transient nature. I don't know. Without let's talking about people watching it and engaging with it and consuming it, there's definitely that transient nature of people participating, right?
Totally.
But, because people, loads of people are running at the moment. We probably all know people who are doing the London Marathon.
Running is having a real resurgence.
It's having it's having its massive moment at the moment. But people do the London Marathon. They're probably not going to want to do another marathon this year, or do they then go and do something else? I don't know, high rocks or an ultra run or triathlon or whatever it might be. And I think there's
when
so
you
many
say
options.
About doing ultras, I'm like, you're a little bit older than me, but I'm definitely older bodied than you, and my knees are shot. I'm like, dude, don't do that. You're gonna kill your knees.
Yeah, knees are the one thing I haven't had any problems with actually.
So let's get them.
Ankles and hips. Running is a problem for older people for sure because of wear and tear. No doubt about it. But it is amazing what the body can do if you train progressively over a period of time, build things up slowly, strengthen things slowly. You can get a long way.
Quick fire. Let's do it. You go first.
Okay. Nice easy one. Who's better, you or Johnny?
Me. That was easy. hopefully they're all this easy.
Who won more?
Me.
Is that difficult?
Not for me, no.
Which brand are you not sponsored by that you'd most like to be sponsored by?
I don't know. It's kind of difficult because I was sponsored by lots of great brands. I'd not like to upset any of them. Never went near an alcohol brand, and I think that would have been quite interesting for the point of taking it outside of the sport, and appealing to a different audience. And I think that's quite often the sign of a success of a sport. So, if you think of Guinness being synonymous with rugby, and I think it's a really good engagement thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting that. I love that.
No.
But also, I think two ways from an engagement thing and talking about healthy kind of consumption, and also all these brands now going to alcohol-free and repositioning. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. What would you say is the split if we're going mental, physical for you?
Vast majority physical, and then you just have to really draw on the mental when you really need to. So like 80-20 or something.
When did you most need to draw on the mental?
A
specific moment.
Yeah, one particular moment. There was a race, one race once. It's kind of an irrelevant race in a World Series race, and I was running in the lead, and the time to the person in second place was going 16 seconds, 15 seconds. And I told myself, if it gets to less than 10, as soon as that gap I hear is 9 seconds, I'm going to stop and wait for them, have a little rest while they catch me up, and then hope I can hang on to the finish line. And I think it got to 11 seconds and then went back to 12 and 11, 12. And then, it's just one particular time I remember just thinking, this is awful.
What was your pre-race meal?
The night before, I'd actually quite often eat pizza, just really simple pizza, carbs. Morning before, quite strict, stick to really simple carbohydrates. More recently, with long distance racing, I'd actually eat rice pudding because it's just rice is a type of carbohydrate with no fiber in it.
How long before you start do you eat?
I could easily eat a couple of hours before. Yeah, my stomach seemed to be quite good.
But not after that, basically.
Yeah, not after that, or not heavy, and then just stay hydrated, electrolytes, and a little bit of carbs in drink.
What would you say if you'd attribute it to one thing, if you can attribute it to one thing? What would you say made you the best?
Hard work, determination. I think ultimately there is a genetic component. There just is. I mean, I could have done all the hard work and more, and I was never going to win the 100 meters, or probably most other, or breakdancing, or any of the other Olympic medals. So I think we all have a ceiling. There is just predetermined, but most of us don't get anywhere near our ceilings in what we do, right? So yeah, my ceiling was there, and I think hard work probably got me closer to my ceiling than most other people.
Should Seb Coe be CEO, or what is it, chairman or
president?
President of the IOC.
I think he'd be great at the job. Yeah.
I'll call to arms.
What do you think of the enhanced games?
For me, sport is firstly about setting an example and the inspirational effect of it to young people. I am a product of that, been inspired by the Olympics to dedicate my life to doing sport. And it is about, ultimately, performance is about getting the most out of yourself. And so any form of doping completely goes against that. Finally,
for me, we come back here in 10 years' time. What do you want to have done? What do you want to have achieved?
That is a difficult question. The answer is something else outside of a sporting career. I've had an amazing career in sport, and now I'm really excited about doing it in trying to be successful, at least in another sphere.
Alistair, thank you so much for putting up with my very pressing questions. You now see the brotherly dynamic here. This has been such a joy to do, so thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.